Good evening. It is time for the NFL Week 17 edition of the recap edition of the Iman Report. It is Sunday, January 3rd, and now it is time to see who is going to make the big dance. Of course, and recap all the games from Week 17, which teams are making the playoffs, which teams missed, which coaches are getting the pink slip this week. We are, of course, are going to start off with the Sunday night game where the Washington football team beats the Philadelphia Eagles 20-14. Washington is the Washington football team at 7-9 are your NFC least champions. I mean East. But hey, 7-9. I remember when the Seahawks went to the playoffs at 7-9 back in 2010, and they actually managed to win a football game. I don't know if that's going to be the same case this time as they get to play Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That will be on NBC next Saturday night. That should be some fun football there. Alex Smith wasn't exactly his best tonight, but he was serviceable. Alex Smith had 2 touchdowns, but he threw for 2 touchdowns, but he had 2 interceptions. And Philadelphia did all they could do to lose this game, and yet they still made it a competitive game. I don't think Washington's going to have a prayer at getting past the first round of this playoffs. Alex Smith's passer rating today was a minuscule 75.3. Hurts did not play that great today either. He rushed for 8 carries, 34 yards. But now it's on to the offseason for Philadelphia with what could be a lot of questions here. And of course, in the fourth quarter, you saw Nate Sudfeld. He looked like a third string quarterback in this game. But for Philadelphia, the season is over. And now it is time to move on from the 2021 season for Philly. Now it's on to the offseason for Philadelphia. The big note on the inactives today was Carson Wentz. Now Carson Wentz is likely to ask for a trade this offseason, and Doug Peterson is likely coming back, as is Howie Roseman. So we shall see what happens with that as we move on further into the playoffs at this rate. But for Roseman, we'll see what happens if Carson Wentz's contract is not exactly the contract that's the most movable either. His contract is atrocious. It's atrocious. They have a lot of money invested in Carson Wentz, and now he wants out of Philadelphia with potentially Jalen Hurts being the guy maybe going into next season. There's a lot of talk that you could see Wentz maybe go to Indianapolis, a reunion with Frank Reich. Of course, I don't think Philip Rivers is going to be playing in the NFL after this season. We could be seeing Philip Rivers' last game in Indy next week. We'll get to that a little bit later. But, of course, you could see possibly Jacob Eason being packaged in any trade for Carson Wentz. But that's going to be a tough contract for Philadelphia to offload this offseason. Also, another question is going to be who's going to replace Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz is retiring after this season, so they will be looking for a new defensive coordinator in Philadelphia. So there will be a bit of a retool going on in Philadelphia this offseason, and we'll see the pressures now on Howie Roseman at this point. Next up on the docket is a thorough beatdown of the Miami Dolphins by the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo scores 56 points on the Miami Dolphins. Buffalo sent the message today. Buffalo is locked in. Buffalo is your 2 seed and will play the Indianapolis Colts going into next week. And this game got so out of hand so quick. Matt Barkley was able to play the majority of the second half, as did the rest of the second string for Buffalo, and even that was no competition for Miami. Tua stunk in this game. Tua needs a full offseason. Tua needs a full camp next year. Tua needs preseason. I think Tua still has a future in Miami, but still, you saw the lack of preseason for Tua today, and unfortunately, they did not have Fitzmagic to turn to, or Fitztragic for some people, in the second half, and it was a complete and utter disaster for Miami. Miami now, when it was all said and done today, was eliminated from playoff contention. But don't worry, Miami. I think the future is still very bright for Brian Flores' boys. I didn't expect them to go 10-6 and just miss out on the playoff spot. So you still gotta tip your hat to Miami. The future is very bright in Miami. I don't know if a lot of questions are raised today about Tua and his future. As for Buffalo, the future is very bright for Jake Allen. Buffalo could be the contender it could be the beginning of a long reign for the Buffalo Bills now. We shall see. But today was Buffalo's day. Buffalo is your number 2 seed going into next week. Next on the docket, the Baltimore Ravens actually before that, let's go to the New England Patriots beating the New York Jets 28-14. Cam Newton actually had a pretty good game. This was probably one of his better games as a Patriot, with a passer rating of 127.4, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. And the Jets reverted back to the old Jets. There was no win number 3 for the Jets today. Belichick was not going to have any of it. Belichick was still playing for pride. 7-9 is still a lot better than 6-10. And Jacoby Myers had a good game. Sony Michel had a good game. New England finishes 7-9 on the year and will be looking for upgrades this offseason at quarterback. I don't know if it'll be Cam or not. Certainly Brian Hoyer will not be back. You've still got Jarrett Stidham, but Stidham hasn't shown anything that he is a franchise quarterback. I certainly think the Patriots could be one of those teams in the hunt to acquire the services of one Matthew Stafford this offseason. You get Stafford, and then, of course, the Patriots have plenty of cap space to spend on a stud wide receiver, or, of course, draft a wide receiver. They've got to retool this offense, and don't count the Patriots out for next year. I still think Belichick's got one more ace up his sleeve before he calls it a career. They've still got a good defense in New England, but it's still going to be not an easy task for the Patriots to contend in the 2021 season, with the arrival of the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. So the Patriots do have their work cut out for them this offseason, as a quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, yada, yada, yada. As for the Jets, they're 2-14. After the game, Adam Gase was sent packing. Bye-bye, bye-bye. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Yes, Adam Gase was fired after this game. And now Woody Johnson coming back now that, Biden's becoming president. So Woody Johnson no longer going to be ambassador to the UK. So they will have... so Woody Johnson's coming back. We'll see how he and the GM... now I'm getting... Douglas. That's his name. see how him and Douglas handle this GM search, this head coaching search. Rumors are Wink Martindale could be in the hunt for the coaching gig. Another possibility for the coaching gig could be Mike Kafka. So we'll see where that works out. They will have the second pick in the draft. We will see if they. Another question is, do they stay with Sam Darnold? Do they draft a guy like Justin Fields? So we'll see what the Jets do with their number 2 pick in April. I think, though, the future is going to be bright for the Jets in a few years. It's just going to take some growing pains. But now this miserable season is over. They just got to make a decision on Sam Darnold before April. Now, third on the docket is the thorough beatdown between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. And guess what Brandon Allen's rating was today? Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You gotta have something. That's right. Brandon Allen had a passer rating today of 0. And the Bengals still managed 3 points. Allen, 6 for 21, 48 yards passing, 2 interceptions. Lamar did not have to work a whole lot today. 10 for 18, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. The Cincinnati Bengals defense just rolled over and played dead today. Baltimore took care of business. Baltimore is your 5 seed. Baltimore will play Tennessee next week in what could be a J.K. Dobbins versus Derrick Henry showdown. J.K. Dobbins rushed for 160 yards with 2 touchdowns. Lamar ran for almost 100 yards today. Man, that Bengals defense is awful. And hopefully Cincinnati will address defense in the upcoming draft from old cheapskate Mike Brown. We'll see if Zach Taylor keeps his job or not. I say he's safe. This team needs defense next year. It's going through a full rebuild. I expect Zach Taylor to be safe for 1 more year, but I do think he will start the next season on the hot seat. Next game on the docket, the Brownies beat the Steelers, Cleveland, in the playoffs for the first time since 2007. Baker was not great, but good enough. Chubb rushes for 100 yards today. And Baker sacked 4 times. Baker was just good enough. Mason Rudolph actually had a half-decent game in this game. And Cleveland almost choked this game away, which would have landed Miami in the playoffs. Now, but almost is not close enough. Claypool almost made it a game. Claypool had a touchdown, which almost tied the game. But then the Brownies stopped them on a 2-point conversion. But these 2 teams will meet again next week in Pittsburgh for a Sunday night showdown. Steelers are the 3, Brownies are the 6. In the Big Apple today, the New York Giants eliminate the Dallas Cowboys before getting eliminated after Sunday Night Football. Daniel Jones, good enough. Wayne Gallman was good enough. The New York defense slowed down Ezekiel Elliott. Even though Andy Dalton tried to run the ball and almost was successful. I saw a little bit of the trick plays I used to see Boise State play with Chris Petersen at head coach, and back when Kellen Moore was the quarterback at Boise State. We saw a little bit of that trickery today in Dallas, reminiscent of what Chris Petersen would used to play. So Kellen Moore had a few tricks up his sleeve, but New York was still victorious at the end, and Dallas was effectively eliminated. The good part for Dallas next year, they will likely franchise tag Dak Prescott. Prescott will be ready to return in next season, and we will, of course, see a lot more drama in Dallas, because that's how Dallas operates. As for New York, the future of the New York Giants is bright. New York's got a good defense, but is Daniel Jones the long-term answer at quarterback? Next year is kind of going to be a put-up or shut-up year for Daniel Jones. New York's got to look at getting Daniel Jones a stud wide receiver this offseason. Former 49er Anthony Pettis did not look too terrible in this game. Pettis has looked a lot better in New York, but the New York Giants could use another wide receiver. They got to make a decision on Saquon this offseason. Is Saquon Barkley the future? But don't write off the New York Giants. I think they will be back in 2021. In a shootout, in a worthless game, the Vikings beat the Lions 37-35, and it was a typical Lions game. Hopefully, this is the last time we see Matthew Stafford in a Detroit Lions uniform, as certainly the Patriots, the 49ers, the Broncos could all be knocking on Detroit's door requesting the trade for one Matthew Stafford. Stafford is a guy who needs to get the hell out of Detroit. Detroit needs to tear it down to the bolts. Detroit needs culture change, and it looks like Detroit could be looking at Robert Saleh to be coaching the Lions in 2021. As for Minnesota, 7-9. Madison had a good game. Cousins, 28 for 40, a 127.6 passer rating, 3 touchdowns. Minnesota underachieved a bit this year, but I think we'll see what retooling the Vikings do on defense next year. Mike Zimmer could actually be on the hot seat going into the 2021 season. We'll see what moves Rick Spielman makes to upgrade the Vikings defense, but I think it is a hot seat year coming up for Mike Zimmer and a year of tanking for Detroit coming up. In Tampa Bay locks down that 5 seed with a 44-27 win. Matt Ryan was good, but not good enough. A lot of questions about Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, as Atlanta starts looking for a new head coach. Tampa will get ready for Washington next week as your number 5 seed. You've got Tom Brady, who almost threw for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Ronald Jones good enough today. And Tampa looking forward to an easy matchup against the football team before playing the big boys in round number 2. As for Atlanta, this team's got a lot of questions going into the 2021 offseason. A lot more questions than answers at this point. Tennessee wins the South, but not with a little torture, as Houston comes up short in the upset bid today. Deshaun Watson, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Ryan Tannehill was effective, but it was the Derrick Henry show. Derrick Henry runs for 250 yards. That's right, 250 yards in a game. And they almost lose it. Tennessee's defense is bad. That's got to be concerning as they host the Baltimore Ravens next week. A potential track meet between J.K. Dobbins, Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry. This should be a fun matchup, but I don't know. The defense has to be very concerning for Mike Vrabel and the Titans going into Wild Card Weekend. But the Texans, it's now on to the offseason. And now they can go and look to bring in John Dorsey, Eric Bieniemy, and get the Texans back on track for the 2021 season. Next up on the docket, the Indianapolis Colts locked down that 7 seed by beating the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jonathan Taylor, have yourself a game. Anything you can do, I can do better. That's right. Taylor runs for 253 yards today against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, he ran for more yards than Derrick Henry today. And Rivers did not have to break a sweat today at quarterback. It was the Jonathan Taylor show. And the the Colts are now your 7 seed. And we'll shuffle off to Buffalo to play the Bills next weekend. This should be a fun matchup. Congratulations, Frank Reich. And as for Jaguars, with the first pick of the NFL draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Trevor Lawrence. No more Minshew Mania, no more Mike Glennon, no more Jake Luton. It will be Trevor Lawrence being your starting quarterback in Jacksonville. And it's very likely that it's going to be bye-bye for Doug Marrone. The rumor is it's looking like Urban Meyer is what Jacksonville wants to replace Doug Marrone. In Denver, Raiders beat the Broncos 32-31, and the Raiders finished this underwhelming season at 8-8. Derek Carr, 24 for 38. 2 touchdowns, but 2 picks. Drew Lock actually did not play terrible in this game either. But these are 2 teams that have underachieved the season. Las Vegas finishing 8-8. Denver finishing 5-11. The Raiders definitely need to look for upgrades on defense. Find that next defensive coordinator, as I think John Gruden will see. The honeymoon's over in Las Vegas. John Gruden could very likely be approaching the hot seat in the 2021 season. What's going to save his ass, unfortunately, is that awful contract Mark Davis gave him. But as for Denver, Vic Fangio will likely start the 2021 season on the hot seat. I don't know if Denver sticks with Drew Lock next year. They could look to bring in maybe a Gardner Minshew or a Jacoby Brissett to back up Drew Lock. But certainly they definitely at least have to bring in some competition for Drew Lock next year. Or, of course, Denver could be another team in play for Matthew Stafford. But they can't go back with the same court. But they definitely at least need to bring in competition for Drew Lock in this offseason in Denver. And they need to get this quarterback right, or next year it will be adios for Vic Fangio in Denver. In Kansas City, The Chargers beat the Kansas City Chiefs JV squad today. Justin Herbert puts on a clinic, 22 for 31, 302 yards, passing 3 touchdowns. The real question is 7-9 now going to mean that Anthony Lynn's going to be safe? We will find out that question in the coming days. But for the Chiefs, they've rested their starters this week. Question is, will they be less boring and more entertaining in the divisional round? But the future is bright for the Chargers. Is Anthony Lynn the long-term question? Time will tell. But they've found their quarterback in Justin Herbert, and now the spotlight is on 2021 for the Chargers.
It's a lot more magical when you
Next up on the docket, the Packers locked down that 1 seed. Aaron Rodgers near perfect today. 19 for 24, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. And the Packers take care of business. Packers lock down that 1 seed. Green Bay will get that bye. And Trubisky actually did not do terrible in this game, but that's also an indication of actually how good the Packers defense is. The good news for the Bears, they are in by virtue of a Cardinals loss. Chicago will play New Orleans next week. And for that will likely mean Matt Nagy is safe going into 2021. In Carolina, no running back, no problem. Ty Montgomery rushes for 105 yards today. And Teddy Bridgewater and TJ Walker were just terrible today at quarterback. 2 picks for Teddy Bridgewater, 3 picks for PJ Walker. Now the question is, does Carolina look to draft a quarterback in 2021? Bridgewater will be in year 2 of his contract, and it certainly could be a possibility that the Panthers will look for upgrades at quarterback. Bridgewater looking more like a bridge quarterback. And Drew Brees was classic Drew Brees today, throwing for 3 touchdowns. Saints lock down that 2 seed, will host Chicago next week at the Dome. And as I said, we'll see if Carolina decides to draft a quarterback now after a few weeks of underwhelming performance of Teddy Bridgewater, who's gotten progressively worse as the season's gone on. In LA, the Rams locked down that 6 seed in the battle of backup quarterbacks today. Kyler Murray had to leave the game for a while, and Chris Streveler was terrible today. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. John Wolford, no touchdowns and an interception today. Cam Akers played and was decent. Wolford can actually run the ball. He rushed for 56 yards today. The Rams' defense was good enough. They showed up. They took care of business. Rams are your 6th seed and will play Seattle next week. Cardinals eliminated. Cliff Kingsbury, hot seat going into 2021. And last but not least, the Seattle Seahawks beat the San Francisco 49ers 26-23. Russell Wilson with a 4th quarter comeback, with the comeback magic in the 4th quarter. Chris Carson pretty much shut down. CJ Beathard, CJ Beathard. Jeff Wilson Jr. had a good game running the ball. As for San Francisco, mercifully, this season's over for them. And for Seattle, they get ready for the LA Rams. San Francisco, a team that's got a lot of questions going into the offseason. Will Jimmy G agree to restructure his contract? I also think that this is the last time we will see Dee Ford, Jaquiski Tartt in a 49ers uniform. But don't count the 49ers out. They will be back in 2021 with whoever it is at quarterback, whether it be Matthew Stafford, a draftee, a free agent, or Jimmy G. Don't count them out. Also, they get back Solomon Thomas. They get back Nick Bosa. San Francisco is nowhere near done. But now it is on to what's going to be mercilessly for San Francisco. This offseason is done. They go into a long offseason. Now to recap the playoff matchups going into next week, we take a look at the TV schedule first. Here we go. The playoff schedule for this week. For next week, excuse me. On Saturday, it will be the Indianapolis Colts against the Buffalo Bills. This will be on CBS at 10:05 Pacific.
I am Baptiste Loiseau, the cellar master of Rémi Martin.
Followed by at 1:40 Pacific, the Los Angeles Rams against the Seattle Seahawks. Yes, I do live on the West Coast, so I do go by Pacific time out here. And the nightcap on NBC at 5:15 Pacific, the Buccaneers against the football team. That'll be your Saturday games. Your Sunday games, the Baltimore Ravens against the Tennessee Titans on ESPN and ABC. That'll be at 10:05 Pacific. 1:40 Pacific. The Bears against the New Orleans Saints on CBS and Nickelodeon and Amazon Prime. And on Sunday night at 5:15, the Cleveland Brownies against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Those are your matchups. We'll be back to preview those games Friday night. Everybody have a good week of football. Have a good week of work. Stay safe. Good night, everybody.